Islam. This is it in one sentence. Learn this. Very important. Jesus is more than a prophet. Let me repeat that. You and I know that, but Jesus is more than a prophet. Islam recognizes 28 prophets. All the prophets from Noah, from Adam all the way up through Jesus. They recognize 28 prophets. But the key is, to them, Jesus is just one of those 28 prophets. So again, if you understand that concept, you can talk to any Muslim. That's the major difference. So Jesus is more than just a prophet. They would not recognize that. But I'm glad that we have this summation and statement. Is this, again, if you get this, you've got the whole idea. So, let me start with this for a moment. All these world religions we're talking about, all the cults we'll be talking about later, they range anywhere from 50% to 90% the same as Christianity. Does that shock you? Because Satan counterfeits almost perfectly. Many of the things in Islam are the same in Christianity. Don't let that bother you. For instance, we know that Satan, well, first off, let me ask this question. In the physical realm, does it matter whether you're Christian, Muslim, Buddhist, Islam, whatever, to the law of gravity? All of those people, let's say one of each got together and they each were assigned a falls, they can all turn that into electricity, right? It doesn't depend on your Christianity or your religion. Same thing in the spiritual world. There are a lot of things that are the same. And they just take a few things and tweak it. But again, going back to this, the big idea. If you get this, you have the whole distinction. This is the whole lesson right here. Jesus is more than a prophet. But Satan counterfeits really well. In fact, why do you think Muslims are growing so fast right now?
Convert or die.
Well, that's a small percent. We have a lot of misconceptions about Islam we have to be careful about. We're told stuff that really isn't true. That is true in some areas, but no, I'm going to tell you why the Muslim religion is so productive and growing so fast right now, because they are doing exactly what the first century Christianity did. Do you know that they have no organizations beyond the Red Cross that go out and do like we have, what do we have, that go around the world and give out goods and things Christianity has? Can you think of world? So yeah, anything like that. They have nothing like that. They have no mission arms, like all the denominations all have missions arms. Their missionaries are not missions. They're just go out like the first century church did. How did the first century church spread the gospel? Did they stop and set up a college? Did they stop and set up a missions organization and pick missionaries and send missionaries out? No. How did they do it? The ordinary, everyday Christian would travel the byways and highways and go and talk about Jesus and start churches. That's the way it started. That's how. Look, think of the Antioch church. The Antioch church decided to send out Paul and Silas, right? Paul and Silas on a missionary journey. They just picked, the Holy Spirit picked them, they sent them out. Same way that's what the Islam is doing right now. There really is no missionary effort. It's all happening because people are moving into communities, other people are seeing their lifestyle, like it, and want to know more about it. And again, because they're copying 95% or 90% of Christianity, it is a very attractive lifestyle for a lot of people. You're thinking, that's what I've heard. So let me give you a little bit background, just a quick history of how it started. Back in the year 610 AD, there was a man named Muhammad, who you've heard of, and he lived in Saudi Arabia, today's Saudi Arabia, and he lived in Mecca, and there was a lot of spiritual restlessness in Mecca. Now, back then, the Arabs worshipped 360 gods. They had three, so they would be called what? What term would we call someone that worships 360 gods? Polytheists, yes. And Judaism and Christianity was practiced in that area, but they would only come into contact with it as traders came and went from Mecca up to Jerusalem and back and forth. And to them, though, to Muhammad and to the Arabs at that time, Judaism and Christianity seemed more sophisticated than their Arab pagan traditions. Okay? I mean, think of how we look at people in Africa that have that animalism. You know what animalism is? It's where people worship trees and dragons and whatever else they worship. To us, we look down on them a little bit, we shouldn't, because it seems sort of not sophisticated. So the Arabs were a little bit jealous of the Christianity and Judaism. Possibly the high god of their pantheon. Of these 360 gods, there was one called Al-Lah, Allah, whose name simply meant the God. And they wondered, Muhammad wondered if this was the deity that the Jews and the Christians worshipped. And he was thinking about this and pondering about this. And he wondered, why were the Arabs left out? God had sent prophets to all the different nations in his mind. Why had there been no prophet sent to them or their scripture sent in their language? They were left out of God's divine plan in his mind. And then also at this time, the Bedouin tribes in Europe were like anyone remember the Hatfield and McCoys here in the United States? Yeah. What happened between the Hatfields and McCoys?
It was an argument over a pig.
Yes, it was an argument over a pig, and what happened over the course of the next 1,500 years? Vendetta, feud. They would kill one person, and then the other family would kill one person. This was what was happening in their world of the tribe. All these tribes were blood vendettas and fighting and going after each other. And this murderous cycle, tribe versus tribe. And Muhammad wondered, was God ignoring them and leaving them to their own murderous devices? Was this the just rewards they got for killing each other? So that all changed on the night of 17 Ramadan, 610 AD. And I have to say, Muhammad had this habit of once a year taking a retreat up to a cave. He would retreat to a cave and think about spiritual things. And this particular night, he woke up, and this is from their literature, to find himself overpowered by a devastating presence, which squeezed him tightly until he heard the first words of the new Arab scripture pouring from his lips. So this is him describing what happened to himself. He woke up, and he felt his whole body being squeezed, and it was painful, and he didn't like it. And next thing he heard this Arab language of scripture pouring from his mouth. Okay? For 2 years, he kept quiet about this experience. And further revelations kept coming. And he only talked to 2 people in these 2 years. His wife, and he had a cousin that was a Christian, believe it or not. But we're not sure what type of Christian it was, how true the faith this Christian was. And both were convinced that these revelations were from God. They told him these were messages from God. They told him that, his wife and his cousin. And only 2 years later, 612, did he feel empowered enough to preach and win converts with the message. And his message was total submission of one's entire being to God. And you see how close that is to Christianity. But total submission of one's entire being to Allah. And Allah's demand that human beings behave to one another with justice, equity, and compassion. That was the original message. And you can see how this would appeal to a bunch of warring tribes. Right? Who wouldn't want justice, equality, and compassion? So, he did win over. We're going to jump ahead now. This is the world's. You think this is the world's largest, second largest, third largest, or fourth largest religion right now? Second still, right now. There's 1.8 billion adherents, and that's 24% of the world's population. And it's growing rapidly, faster than any other religious group right now.
So how many Christians do they say there is compared to?
A little over 2 billion, so it's getting close.
Yeah. Wow.
So Muslims are currently the majority population in 50 countries. Majority population. 13% of all Muslims live in Indonesia. Okay, so that's the largest country. 31% of all Muslims live in Southwest Asia, so that includes that whole area. 20% of all Muslims live in the Middle East and North Africa. 75, now if you've been around Muslim, you know there's two sects that they have split into, just like we have Protestant and Catholic. They have the Sunni and Shia, right? The Sunni is 75 to 90% of all Muslims are Sunni. So they're a big proportion. And just without going into detail what separates the two, they believe that the prophets and the leadership of the religion should have been passed on down through his father-in-law. And the Shia are only 10 to 20% of the Muslim population. They believe it should have been passed to the son-in-law and cousin. So it's just a matter of how the religion, like in Catholicism through the Pope, well, they believe that it should have been passed on different ways. So they have different doctrines, but we don't need to go into that. Just be aware that when you hear in the news Sunni and Shia, the Sunni are by vastly the big majority, 75 to 90% of Muslims. Shia is only 10 to 20%. Now, some of the teachings, that's how Muhammad became prophet. Some of the teachings here, and some of this is on your paper, some of it isn't. Muslims believe that Islam means submission, surrender. Okay? And again, what do we believe about Christianity? Do we submit and surrender to Christ? Or should we? Okay, so it's sort of similar there. But here's the key. They believe it is the complete, universal version of this. That the original faith had been revealed many times before through all these prophets. But sooner or later, each one of those prophets went bad. And this is the final revelation. This is the ultimate last revelation. This is the straightening out of the original faith. So you can understand why they are so anxious to spread that. And again, think about how we look at Judaism. How do you feel about talking to a Jew? What do you say to them? When they say, with Judaism, we talked about that last week. They believe that they have everything they need right now. They're just looking for the Messiah. And what do we say to them? Christianity is the final revelation. We surpass Judaism. So you can see how they, in their minds, they think they are surpassed Christianity. Christianity went corrupt and it went off track, and they have rediscovered the right way, the true way, and that's what they're promoting. So again, they do believe in Adam and Noah and Abraham and Moses and Jesus. And again, they have 28 prophets from the Old Testament they believe in. So if you were discussing with a Muslim, you would talk about Moses and Adam. Obviously, the best thing to do is talk about Jesus, discuss there. And does anyone know what they call Jesus in Arabic? It's Isa, Isa. So if you hear that word, that's their word. That's Arabic for Jesus. So, if they believe the Quran, and we'll talk about what the Quran is in a minute. By the way, what do you think the Quran is? Okay, how did they get that? Okay, now remember, how did we say the first time Muhammad started uttering? He did not write, no one wrote anything down for several years, and it was his followers that wrote down what he said. He never wrote it down himself. But the things that he said that came out of his mouth is the Quran. Okay, we'll be discussing that here in a minute. But what are the ramifications of this belief? What are the outcome of this belief if they believe that there's this original faith that got corrupted, they've resorted back to the original faith? How do you think, what will the result be in their thinking then? And how they go about interacting with the world? Think about how do we respond to Judaism? If we had our way, or God's will, what would happen to Judaism? They'd all be converted and understand that Jesus Christ was the promised Messiah and is coming back. They feel the same way about us and Judaism and everybody else. They believe that Islam must replace Judaism and Christianity and everything else in the world, because it's a true revelation. And because the meaning of Islam is submission and surrender, it tends to be a little more militant and missionary-minded than some of the other religions. Now, I know what you said. The Quran has passages that protect Christians and Jews, and it also has passages that say kill them. So it's a little confusing at times. But it is a religion not just of proselytizing, but of formalized calls of death to apostates and heretics. So if you are a Muslim and you convert to Christianity, that's one of the worst things you can do. You are marked for death. So that's why it's so hard in some of the African countries and other Middle East when they become Christians. Be very careful. You know, Buddhists and separatists and atheists and agnostics don't do that. You know, they don't care. If you leave them, they don't kill you. So how should we respond to their feelings? So the calls for jihad, anyone know what jihad means?
Holy war.
Yes, but it has a wide range of meaning. It can be anything from convincing someone of the right way to an actual waging war, physical war, to conquer something. So it is a wide range. So how should we respond to all this? We have to be careful that we don't take up Islamophobia. What is Islamophobia?
You're scared of them.
Why?
Because if you look back on history of what they've done, kind of makes you a little leery to talk to
Of
them.
course, they would say the same thing about Christians, about back to the Spanish Inquisition. But anyway, that's not a nice word. It's a pejorative word, smacking to many people of racism. But remember, Muslims are not a race or an ethnic group. Remember that. They are every nation, every tribe. They are all different. They're not just Arabic, but they're not anymore. The fear and hatred of Islam is not the proper response. What is the proper response?
The way you would deal with anybody
Right.
when you talk to religion.
Right. If you walk up to someone and you automatically just have this whole total disgust and hatred, and you try and carry on a conversation, how well is that going to go? Not well at all. So, you know, as much as do not fear and hate, love and talk and pray that the Holy Spirit can help you discuss. And again, the key point is Jesus. That's what you want to discuss if they will talk with you. So a couple of things about this. The Quran in the original Arabic is the unaltered final revelation of God. They actually believe that there's this big book in heaven, and that over the course of thousands of years, God has sent to man through prophets 4 books down to earth. And the first book was the Torah. They believed in the Torah. They believe in the book of David, what they call, which is Psalms and all that. And they believe in the gospel, believe it or not. And then the final one is the Quran. But they think all these books came from this original super book up in heaven. And so keep that in mind. They believe that the Torah and the Gospels have become distorted in either interpretation or text or both. That's why they believe in those books, but they believe they've been corrupted once they came to earth. So if you try and quote Bible verses to them to start out with, that may not go so well in the beginning, because they were taught that yes, this was a holy book at one time, but it's probably corrupted, and you're saying corrupted things. There's 114 chapters in their book, the Quran, and they call them surahs. And I don't know if any of you ever picked up the Quran and tried to read it in English. By the way, that's almost a corruption of their religion. It's only to be read in Arabic. In fact, they say that if you read, you don't have to understand what it says or what it means. You just have to be able to memorize it and repeat it in Arabic. And, you know, before we get too uppity about that, that's what we've done too a lot of times in Catholicism. You know, we're repeating Latin phrases not knowing what it meant. Or we will repeat the Lord's Prayer and not even think about it. So, I mean, don't get too judgmental there. But 114 chapters with 6,236 verses. Just to compare, the Bible has 10 times as many chapters. We have 1,189 chapters. We have 31,000 verses. So it's a lot easier learning the Quran than it is the Bible. Now, in addition to the Quran, they have a couple things. They have something called the Sunnah, which is the teachings and examples of Muhammad. So this would be like our commentaries. All the people that talked about Muhammad and knew him wrote down something called the Sunnah, and these are all explanations of how Muhammad lived and what he did and what he didn't do. Then they have something called the Hadith, which is additional news reports, documented traditions of teachings and actions of Muhammad. So these are the 4 books. And again, I don't know what's on your notes here. And then something called the Sharia, which you've all heard about recently. What is the Sharia? Anyone? What do you think it is? Yeah, Chuck.
It's a set of laws.
Okay, it's their set of laws. Now, again, you hear all about these scary things in England where they are trying to get the Sharia passed instead of the common laws. Basically what's happening, and I'm not saying this is a good thing, but it'd be like, let me put it in context for us. It'd be like if we had someone in our church steal something, and the person was suing them. What does the Bible say that we are to do? Yeah, that's the Old Testament, but and you're correct too. The Bible says you're to work that out within yourself. You're not to go to the civil courts. You're to do it inside church discipline. Well, that's basically what Sharia law is. It's their church discipline inside their community. Now they're hoping to extend. You know, if they let's say that Galilee, Ohio was a Muslim town, and they were practicing Sharia law there. They would not negate the civil law, but if one of their people committed a crime or did something, they would want to take care of it inside their own church. They would not force a non-Muslim in Galilee to be submitted to that. But what they're hoping to do is grow it out for everyone is a Muslim, then that makes it easy. They're not against civil law, but they want to take care of it. So does that make sense? I mean, I'm not saying it's a good thing, and it's basically very close to our Old Testament law. By the way, who would want to live under the Old Testament law? As Dave said, what's the punishment for stealing, Dave, in the Old Testament? Cut off your hair, yes.
So if they believe in civil law, but they want to take care of all the issues themselves, when does the civil law ever come into play?
Well, the other thing is, in Islam, church and state are one. They merge the two. There's no separation. They believe that the state should become Islamic and should take on the rules. Just like the same thing we do. We technically believe that the United States should run under Judeo-Christian laws, right? Mm-hmm. But in our Constitution, we don't force people to do that, and we don't. So again, there's so many similarities. It's not, you don't. Let me move on here. They reject the Trinity. Again, back to Jesus. They believe that Allah is one. And also about Allah, the interesting thing is, they believe that Allah reveals His will, not Himself. Big difference. What's that mean, that He reveals His will, but He never reveals Himself? How would that affect you if you were an adherent of that religion?
Open to interpretation.
Interpretation, and you're right.
If it happens, then a common comment among the Muslim community is if God wills it. They actually will not tell you no. Say like, if they want you to do something and they can't do it, they won't say no, they'll say if God wills it. So then it becomes by faith.
A lot of parents say maybe to their kids, but
yeah, there's no no It's disgraceful for them to say no, they say God wills it.
The
What
key
you say
though,
now?
and you are correct, but the key is, because you can never know God, there is no personal relationship involved at all in their religion. If you can't know God, He's transcendent, which He is, He's beyond us in time and space, which He is, that's all true. But they say you can only know His will revealed through His prophets. You can never know God Himself. So there's no personal relationship. There's no, again, without Jesus, there's no personal relationship with Jesus. So that would be a very hard religion to live under. A whole set of rigid, dominant rules, but no personal relationship or no love between the deity and yourself. So that's a lot of time why this is going to sound terrible, why they're cranky. Now, they do have a lot of support and community with each other. But imagine not being able to have a relationship with God. It'd be like reading the Ten Commandments and that's all you know about God. You follow those and that's it. Don't ask questions. They don't believe in any pictures of God, no descriptions of God. You're not allowed to use human things like under His wing. You can't say that because God doesn't have wings. You can't say His voice. So I mean, they're very God. And again, you almost can't blame them because God is transcendent and beyond it. But because He sent Jesus Christ, God with us. There's a big difference. That's the difference. In Christianity, God came to us. In Islam, He's still up there, miles away, transcendent. There's no interaction. The only interaction is His prophet speaking His will. So again, a couple things here that God knows what He's doing. And I happened to attend a conference with Pastor Jim a couple months ago, and there was an Islam missionary there from Egypt. And I took a few notes a couple months ago. I'm not going to be doing this, but I want to pass a few things on that he said from living in Egypt, and he lived in Syria, Egypt and Jordan and Syria. He lived in all three. Again, Muhammad became the mouthpiece of the eternal book, they say. It is a recitation to be kept in one's heart. And God revealed His will, not Himself. And here's why He did it, to fix man's dual problem of weakness of will and weakness of memory. So Allah said that man has two problems. One of them is your will is weak and your memory is terrible. Now, how many would agree with both of those? Is your will weak and your memory terrible? Yes. So, to fix that problem, He sent Muhammad this beautiful, and it is said that when some Arabs hear the Quran read out loud, it is so beautiful and powerful and so melodious, they just are overwhelmed and come to tears. So, I mean, that's why they're not allowed to change it. The Quran is still in 7th century Arabic, and it must be memorized. You don't need to know what it is or what it means, you just repeat it. And by the way, there's no assurance of salvation in Islam. You do not know, well, with one exception, unfortunately, you do not know until you reach heaven, or paradise, whether Allah will accept you or not. So, no relationship, no assurance of salvation. That's a horrible way to live. Some theology. And Chuck had a whole section of this, and I cut it out not because of what he wrote, but because of the time incidents. Islam. This is it's the natural religion of black people, it says, because it provides the means of full spiritual, mental, and physical liberation from the oppressive systems designed to subjugate them. Have you ever wondered why so many black and people become Muslim, black Muslim, you heard that? It's because they believe Islam teaches equality, and there's no separation of races. You're all equal.
Then why are they so horrible to women?
Well, let me talk about that. Women flock to this Islam for two reasons. Islamic teaching focuses on modesty. It liberates them from rampant fashion-related consumerism. I don't know if any of you fight that, but you don't have a problem with that if you're Islamic. Also, it eliminates objectifying all women, and it eliminates sexualizing pre-producing girls. So, believe it or not, a lot of women flock to this because they enjoy not having to worry about about wearing fashion to,
What
Yes.
was the last statement about?
Free
girls?
what's the word, abuse of women. Girls that are not sexually fully developed yet. You know, in our culture today, these little Miss Beauty pageants, you know, all that, we are really making little girls look like they're 18 and 20 right now. And that's horrible, and that's bad, and so they do something about it. This law teaches against that, and so women, now, yes, I guess in some, it depends upon the marriage, but a lot of women really enjoy, so it's said, being Islam, Muslims. They also gain a reputation for cleaning up lives involved in crime, drugs, and gangs. Wherever they go into a city, when they first go in, now I'm not talking about leaving the Middle East, I'm talking about the United States or Europe, that is one of the safest neighborhoods in the area. Because they will not tolerate drugs, crime, the Sharia law is against that. So, again, they get a good reputation for policing the community. But what we need to look at, we only have a couple minutes here. We can, don't worry about all this stuff. If you want this later, we can get some information. But the important thing is I want to get to the Bible verses here. So they want God, his name is Allah. Angels, they believe heavily in angels. The fallen angel is Satan. Followers of Satan. Demons, they believe in that. Scripture, again, they believe in 4 God-inspired books, which we talked about. You're not going to have time to write all this down. I'm going to go through it too quick. Sorry. Muhammad. End times, they believe in the end times. Predestination, again, as was mentioned, if it's Allah's will, you'll hear that many times. Everything's predestined down to the letter, down to the exact second. I mean, if you walk out in front of 30 people shooting at you, if Allah's will is that you don't die that day, you're not going to die. If it's His will you die that day, you will. So why, that's
Well, there is some truth to that with God.
yes. Again, like I said, a lot of this is 90% we can apply to Christianity. 5 pillars of Muslim faith. You have to just don't write it down right now. You must repeat this. There is no God but Allah, and Allah, Muhammad is His prophet. You have to believe that and be able to repeat that. You pray 5 times a day. Daybreak, noon, mid-afternoon, after sunset, early evening, facing Mecca. You must kneel and bow. Again, part of this came from the original Arab tribes who were very proud. And by bowing and kneeling 5 times a day, it took some of that pride out of them.
Yeah, and I heard just recently, it depends upon how you pray, how much like points you give, if you are kneeling and bowing, but if you lay or if you sit or do something else, then it's not as many points.
I don't know, but again, you can't believe everything you hear. There's a lot of rumors flying around there. That might be true, because it is a works-based religion. If you do these 5 things, you will have a shot at getting to heaven. A shot. If you don't do any of these 5 things, you definitely know where you're going to heaven. So alms, you're required to give 2.5%. So would you rather give 10% or 2.5%? That attracts people, If you're a miser, you might prefer Islam. Ramadan, the 9th month of the year, and the reason Ramadan is celebrated is that's when Muhammad got his first revelation from the God in his mind.
Is that the same as our 9th month?
No, I don't know when that is. Anyone know?
Fall. It's in the fall.
Does it change or is it always?
Yes, it's always changed, like Easter.
Okay.
It's on a lunar
Okay.
calendar, so it changes.
And during Ramadan, you are not supposed to eat or drink all day long. From sunrise to sunset. At sunset, you have your meals. I don't know how you do that in the desert. How would you not drink all day? But you cannot commit another act during this time, or the fasting is meaningless. You wasted the whole month. You can go all month, and then the last month you yell at your wife, and then you blew the whole month. And you have to go to Mecca at least once in your lifetime. If it's too difficult or dangerous, you can send someone else in your place. So, interesting. So, let's look at this real quick. This is the important part. It's already filled in for you, so you don't have to worry about it. But the Muslims believe in 4 God-inspired books. But because Muslims believe that Jews and Christians corrupted their scriptures, Allah's final word of mankind, the Quran. So what do we say? Scripture, Old and New, is supreme authority of the church, sole guide for faith and practice. So, actually, we believe in 3 of the 4 books, correct? Plus some extra. The Bible that contains no more than those 3 books they talk about. But, okay, good. Jesus Christ. Believe that Jesus was only a man, a prophet below Muhammad in importance, who did not die for man's sins. That's their belief. What is our belief? Jesus was what? Son of God.
He did die for
He did die for our sins. He was sinless redeemer who died and was raised again for sinful man. So a little difference there. Again, that's the whole key. Remember what I said at the beginning. What's the first important statement on our thing? What did it say? Jesus what? Is more than a prophet. That's the whole key. Remember that. And by the way, in the 28 prophets, Jesus is ranked below Muhammad. Muhammad is number 1. So, God. Muslims believe there's no God but Allah. And by the way, you will be put to death for talking about the Trinity in some places if the Sharia law is in effect there. So you have to be very careful about that. There's one essence of the Godhead in which 3 entities exist co-equally and co-eternally in the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Can you see why to them believing in Jesus and in the Holy Spirit would be blasphemy?
Yeah, because then to them you're creating more gods.
Right.
They took their religion from
From 360, to go back to that, yeah, that's just horrible. Muslims claim that humans are born with hearts that are clean slates. If they commit sins, these can be overcome by acts of the will. What's our belief on that?
Born sinners.
We are born corrupted by sin, spiritually dead, apart from God's grace, and that no one does good apart from faith in Jesus Christ. Okay, good. Allah does not love those who do wrong, and each person must earn his or her own salvation. And when you get to the end of the time, again, it's up to His will, whether you get it or not. If you do all those 5 pillars religiously your whole life, and you make your trek to Mecca, you have a shot at getting to heaven. But it's still down to His will, and you will not know. Okay.
Say they have to earn their own salvation, but yet they turn around and they put videos on YouTube or whatever it is about cutting people's heads off and stuff. Now, they say one thing and then do another, but
Well,
then,
not, if they're, again, it goes back to interpretation. There are certain verses in the Quran that says to do that, so they are earning their salvation by doing that. And those particular beliefs, those people, that may not be, not all Muslims think that, but it's open to interpretation. A loving God sent to His Son to die for our sins according to the inspired word. So a big difference. Salvation, you don't earn it, you don't deserve it, but we get it because why? Jesus died for our sins. If we accept that. Some homework assignments there. Now, I realize you couldn't fill everything in, and you have 1,000 questions. I have time for about 3 questions. And I may not know the answer. But, yes, Chuck.
I would like to address Deb's statement about why women stay with Muslims. Mostly, if they stay within the Muslim faith, it's because they've been raised that way. They've been raised women to believe that they're subservient to men to start with. And the other part is fear that, under Sharia law and others, that if they step outside any one of those directions and the way they have to conduct their lives, that, they're in big trouble, even up to the point of death.
And they are taken care of. I mean, it's maybe not a good, but that reminds me, one thing I forgot to say. They did a survey on difference between blacks and whites who converted to, actually the Muslims do not say convert. They say rebirth. You're born a Muslim and you go wonky and then you come back. So there's no conversion in Muslims, it's rebirth. But they said the majority of whites that revert to Islam or convert to Islam mostly had no previous religious experience. They were agnostic or atheists. However, in the black community, the majority had previous contact or connection to Christianity. Many of them were former attendees themselves or had parents, siblings, or strong Christian aunts, uncles, grandmas. but for some reason, it did not, yes, no.
Well, finish your thought.
No, I was just gonna say,
It's still, I mean, we have to be very careful because
oh, yes.
we villainize Muslims, and yet we will go and buy things from the Amish all day long. And there's really, when you lay it out, there's really not a lot of difference in the philosophy.
Except for the violence aspect.
Except for the Bible.
Yes.
There's really no difference. I mean, at the end of the day,
Right.
talk to an Amish person, ask them what they believe sometime.
There's a lot of Amish who are Christians.
Well, they are, but a lot of
You're
them
gonna
are.
find a Muslim that's a Christian.
But are they really Christians, or are they going by what the bishop says that they should
There's a
do?
lot of Amish that are very
So
Christian.
maybe the ones that post the videos are more considered what they call a radical.
Yeah, the radical, there's all sorts of percentages of how much are radicalized, but I think that anywhere between people, 5 to 10% maybe, seriously radicalized. And there is a struggle in the Muslim world right now trying to figure out what's what and what's where.
Amish don't cut your head off though.
If you're a
Amish
Muslim,
don't
if you're
cut
a
your
true
heads off, they
Muslim,
don't
you're
cut your
radicalized.
hands off.
Pardon?
If you're a true Muslim, you're radicalized, because if you're not radicalized, you're not following the faith. So, the Muslim population, I disagree with one of your points, they put up with civil law, they do not respect civil law, they have Sharia law. Sharia law means everything to them. If you go to Dearborn, Michigan, it's like going to the Middle East, if you've ever been to the Middle East or a Muslim nation. They actually have mercy killings, where
Right.
if my daughter goes out and wears clothes that she shouldn't, it's I can kill her, because that way she no longer sins.
And I agree with that in some of those, but again, it's taking what we should be doing as Christians a step farther. We really do not practice church discipline the way the Bible says we should, and take care of our elderly in the community. They go many
Because
steps further.
they're taught the Quran and the Hadith from
birth, right?
from birth, so they know that inside and out, they know every law, they know everything.
And again, I'm not trying to defend, I'm just trying to show you how close it is to Christianity. And again, Jesus, you gotta talk about Jesus. If you can get them to talk, it's all about, that's the key. Who Jesus is, what he did. Go ahead.
You
yeah.
said earlier, no guarantee for them to go to heaven, but then you said there was one.
Yeah.
Martyrdom.
That's what I thought.
And I don't know if that applies to women or not. Does anyone know, does that apply to women and children or just men?
Basically, what they're told is they have their imam, and the imam. This is how they work. Is the imam basically would tell somebody like me, well, your works, they stink, your life stinks, you got no way of going to heaven. However, here you go, here's your chance. Become a martyr, and you'll have glory in heaven. So that's how. I mean, people look at the suicide bombers and what they do in the Middle East and the stuff that they do, and can't understand why until you've lived in the culture and worked with the people and actually talked to them.
But do you know if it extends?
I don't even understand.
Does it extend to women and children? Because they started just recently, that latest set of bombs with women and children with conventional people.
I would say yes, because mercy killings, you will kill your daughter if she sins, so that she doesn't sin
But if you
anymore.
kill her, she might get to heaven.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, so
So maybe
you're
it does.
preventing her from. And they will tell you that one of the reasons that I think we've all been, when you've been in that culture, they actually want to keep their women covered, because that way they can beat them. And you don't see the bruises, and you don't see the scars. They literally say that.
Yeah, some. There's a lot of meetings going on in our culture too, but not as bad probably. Again, I'm not trying to defend, I'm just trying
Well,
to.
what he's saying is
But-
they're covering enough.
Their coverings are
You
more
can't
than
tell,
just
right.
humility. The coverings are to cover up what they do to these women. And that another point that you made, the reason they will outpopulate us at some point is because they can have 4 wives, and they can only have 4 wives. One of the gentlemen that I do business with, he had 8 wives. You can retire 4. He retired 4 of them. So he had
So wives are married too? What that marriage?
The rule is, you retire and you have to take care of them. All the wives have to be treated the same, but when you go in their homes, they'll literally have like 4 wings of their house. And then there's a main area, and each wife is responsible for a different aspect of the daily life.
So again, all this, so what should our response be? Well, yeah, I mean, that's a simplified answer, love, that's not gonna,
No, but it's telling them and explaining to them Christianity and how Christianity is there so that they can have and know that they have eternal life.
right, relationship and eternal life are two big differences.
So out of that is love.
Right.
I-
Well, yeah, Greg?
I would say that understanding the differences between Islam and Christianity and making sure that you know and that it is love and that there is salvation through Jesus and that it's not by works, it's by faith. And I mean, these are the things that you have to understand, but you have to be sound. You know, the time that I spent over there, I talked to Muslims, and the biggest thing and the biggest hang-up between the two, and we would have good discussions. A lot of times I would have to say, I have to get back to you on that, because they would ask me questions. I wouldn't know. And however, they do know. They know what they're talking about. So there's no, I'm going to have to get back to you on it. They would have an automatic response for everything. You know, so it was embarrassing to me to have to research and come back to them and say, okay, this is why, and this is that. But, however, I wasn't going to just make something up.
Right.
Yeah.
And let me, we gotta close, we're way over time. Let me end on this statement. I found, if some of you are worried about how high a bar we have set at our church for membership and what our glorify God by making disciples, let me read a discipleship goal, a church goal by another church that I came across, and this is an evangelical church. Think about this. This goes to what Greg said. This is their discipleship goal in this church. Knowing that dropping off any member of my church in any city, and that person could grow in Jesus, make disciples, and start a church. That describes the first century Christian church to a T. And that's what we need to get back to. But that's why the Muslims are outperforming right now, because they are doing that.
And I think if we can get them to talk about Jesus, and then I think if you use the part where they don't have that assurance, but we do, I think that would make it a little bit more enticing to them, so
Right.
maybe think more of converting.
How many of you, think about this, would take up the challenge of being able to be dropped off in a city, just you, or your family, or your wife, and your kids, and be able to grow in Jesus, make disciples, and start a church? That's really the Christian model. And because we have to know our Bible as well as the Muslims know theirs. So again, that's why discipleship is so important. I just want to pass that on. We need to close. We're way past time here. I know we can go on for 2 more lessons.
Yeah, okay.
Father, we thank you this morning. We understand that, like anything, like homosexuality, like anything that we don't understand, we don't look at, we have to, in any other religion, we have to look at them with love, not disgust. We have their people, their children of God that you love, but do not know you and need that personal relationship to understand their faith and trust in you, Lord. So help us to not beat people over the head with our Bible, to love them, to engage, to start the conversations. But we need to know your word, Lord. We've heard the last couple of weeks in sermon after sermon how important your word is for keeping us pure, for keeping us growing, for all sorts of things. We need to know your word better, Lord. So shame on us, and help us to develop our understanding of who you are and what you've said in your word, so we can go out and talk to other people about it. Be with us now as we go to the service to follow. And Lord, this is Mother's Day. We ask a special blessing on all mothers. It's part of your plan, Lord, part of your divine will. We ask these things in your name. Amen.